Learning a language on your own is so rewarding, but also so challenging. The single biggest barrier standing between us and proficiency in our target language isn't vocab lists or tricky grammar structures, it's actually motivation. Imagine you had all the motivation in the world to study your language and you never skipped a study session, always making time for it. Putting in hours and hours of language study feels not just effortless, it feels fun and meaningful. Actually attaining proficiency would only be a matter of time and having access to resources via your internet connection. Today I'm going to walk you through my 5-step framework to cultivate and maintain your motivation, drawing on psychological and neuroscientific strategies, combined with my own personal experiences self-studying Mandarin. If you're new here, my name's Izzy, I'm a doctor and Cambridge graduate, and I learn Mandarin Chinese in any free time I can get. If you're also interested in learning Mandarin Chinese, I'm creating a course distilling everything I've learned over thousands of hours of self-studying Mandarin to hopefully help you save time on your journey to fluency. If you'd like to hear more, get access to some free Chinese resources, and also get an early bird discount on the course, feel free to sign up via the link below. I've created a free Notion worksheet that's paired with this video to help guide you through all the key steps. Very excitingly, I'm also starting a newsletter, so feel free to sign up for that and you'll get extra news from me, tips about language learning and study tips and health and well-being, and any various worksheets and bonus content that I have coming up. Step 1 is discovering and then really understanding why you actually want this. What is it at the very start you're thinking, hell yeah, I really want to learn Chinese because XYZ. Connecting with your why and actually writing this down so that you can come back to it when you're feeling demotivated can help to keep you going on your language learning journey. Create a specific page in your Notion or journal or somewhere where you can remember this day that you've really connected to why you're embarking on this language learning journey. Write it down and really connect with that feeling of how motivated you are in this moment to learn this language. Along with connecting to the feeling, come up with some concrete reasons, pros and cons maybe, of why you want to learn this language. For example, I really want to learn Mandarin because I'm half Chinese but from a Cantonese speaking background, and now Mandarin is much more commonly spoken across China, and I want to learn Mandarin because not knowing the language makes me feel disconnected from that sense of my heritage, and I want to be able to talk to relatives and friends in China and communicate with them. At the age of 21, Arnold Schwarzenegger forced himself to learn English as an adult by moving to the US without knowing basically any English at all. All he had was perseverance and the sense of purpose. He connected to his why. He knew that his dream was to be successful in the US, and if he ever wanted employment in his dream careers as a politician or movie star, he would need to learn English, and this was a really powerful motivator that he came back to again and again.
So it was just a question of how do you do it? Because when you have a goal, when you have a vision, everything becomes easy.
I think this is a great case study of how if you really have a very strong purpose, then you will push yourself and keep going even when it's hard, even when you feel demotivated. You'll come back to that reason and that can help pull you through. And it clearly worked for him because he moved to the US, became a very successful bodybuilder, then was governor of California for a while and also a Hollywood star in several movies. Step 2 is to fear the consequences. So this might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but let me explain. Psychological research has shown that fear is an extremely powerful motivator. And we can actually use this to maintain consistency in our routines and to avoid giving up on our goals. This is a psychological phenomenon known as fear appeal, where you're appealing to that sense of fear. Stimulation of the central nucleus of the amygdala, which is the area of your brain that takes part in coordination of fear, results in this sense of fearful motivation. And we can combine this fear appeal with a sense of self-efficacy, which is a person's belief in their ability to complete a task or achieve a goal. In this case, our belief that we are, in fact, able to learn this language. Imagining then having connected to your why in step 1, if you visualize, okay, what if I don't actually achieve this and don't bother learning my language, learning, for example, Chinese? How is that going to feel? Imagine that world where you never achieve your goal and you never achieve proficiency in your target language. Contrast this starkly with your why, the reason you want to do it. For me personally, I imagine that I'll never be able to fluently speak Chinese, never be able to truly travel in China in a connected way where I can communicate with native speakers who don't speak English, because there's a large percentage of the population in China who don't speak English. Additionally, I'd feel that loss of connection with that part of my heritage and that part of the world, and that loss of connection with the ancient history and the people living there. Imagining that world where I can never speak Mandarin feels like a real tragedy, and it feels motivating in some very deep way because I don't want that to be my reality. I want to change my reality from that default path to the new one that I've chosen where I can speak Mandarin, and that's going to take active effort because the default path is the easy way to go. That's if I just don't do anything, if I just chill, I don't bother inputting in the hours. I can see if I extrapolate out the outcome that appears there, and that's not what I wish for myself. Rather than just purely positive motivation, it's reminding ourselves that if we don't put in the work, there are things that we will miss out on, because factually we don't have unlimited time and we don't have unlimited energy, and also depending on our personal life circumstances, we may have more or less time to actually study the language. So this isn't an opportunity to beat yourself up or make yourself feel bad about it. It's just trying to connect with that sense of motivation that can help to push you forwards to actually achieve your goals. Step 3 is to clarify and create your game plan. This is a very clear plan that's easy to execute on. One thing that can stop motivation in learning a language is when you don't have a clear next step to work towards. This lack of clarity can mean that even when you do have a tiny shred of motivation to learn your language, when you sit down to start, you're like, oh, I actually don't even know what to do and where to start. That extra friction there can be enough to kill that tiny sparkle of motivation, and then you just find it really difficult to go on. The best way to combat this is to come up with a list of resources of different types and plan what sort of order of priority you want to do them in. This means that when you sit down, you know, okay, my next move is to do this. Each week I want to do these 3 exercises or these 3 things, and you're like, okay, each week I tick them off. When I sit down, I pick one, I go. The next part of this is to actually create time and space to execute on this game plan. My favorite way to do this is time blocking. By setting aside clear times for yourself in which you know that you're going to work on your language, you'll make it much easier to find the time to learn because you already found it beforehand. Make sure to block actually reasonable and manageable lengths of time for yourself so you don't end up just ignoring them entirely. I'd recommend sitting down each week and looking at your calendar ahead and then time blocking in time to learn your language, whether that's on your commute or in the evenings or in the mornings before you go to work or go to school. I made a whole video that discusses strategies for productivity and time blocking, and I'll link it somewhere over here. Step 4 is to develop energy contingencies. This is in the format of an energy adjusted game plan. So what does this mean? Often we're in different energy states when we come to our language learning time block. So sometimes you might be super full of energy and ready to like really thrash through some intense grammar and very heavy reading. Other times you might be kind of tired, and I've definitely found this coming home from work, from my job as a doctor. I'll often be like, oh, I barely have the energy to even eat and sleep, so how am I going to even study Mandarin and go through an intense study session? When you're in low energy states like this, instead of just completely discounting your study session, you could try instead coming up with an energy adjusted game plan and energy contingencies for these circumstances where you think, okay, so I'm going to have my list of low energy language learning activities such as watching a Chinese comedy or just listening to a chill podcast in the background or listening to some Chinese music. That's a much lower bar in terms of the energy input required. Having different options for yourself in different energy states means that you can maximize any shred of time that you have, no matter what energy state you're in. Often we set the bar too high and we don't have a plan when we can't meet that high bar. I'll include an example of the game plan that I used down below so you can check out if you're interested. No matter how you're feeling, there's always something that we can do. We want to minimize those moments where we give up entirely because there's too much to do. So with these energy contingencies, you will always have the option of doing just a little bit. And if you want to do a lot, you can do that too. So we're always moving forwards. Step 5 is to find your people, even if it's just one person. The power of community is undeniable, and finding a community or even just one person that you can connect with helps you to stay accountable. Numerous psychological studies have showed that having an accountability buddy on some kind of goal that you have increases how much progress you actually make towards it. The book Fluent Forever establishes a really good way to motivate yourself by using an accountability buddy, and by telling someone your goals and having them check in on your progress at regular intervals, you can motivate yourself just through the fear of letting them down. If they want you to succeed, you'll want to succeed too. Fluent Forever is available on short form and also Amazon, links in the description. This person can either be somebody who is just a friend who doesn't even do any language learning or who doesn't even speak the language at all, and you're just like, you know what, hey, I'm learning Chinese, can you help me stay accountable? Or even better than that, maybe it's someone who's also learning that language or is actually a native speaker of that language, and there's so many different ways that you can take this. If let's say it's somebody else who's also learning the same language, you can be like, right, we're going to be Chinese learning buddies, we're going to have our little game plan and we're going to keep each other accountable and check in every week or two as to how our learning is going. You automatically feel that sense of fun and enjoyment when you're thinking about learning it, and you can be like, oh, Susie's going to be checking in on what I've done for my Chinese this week, so maybe I better listen to that podcast, and then I can tell her about the podcast and whether it was a good thing that I'd recommend. Or alternatively, something that I personally did when I was learning Chinese is I had a Chinese language exchange buddy. She was living in north of China, nearish Beijing, and we would meet every single week for a little chat and exchange. We'd speak for half an hour in English and half an hour in Chinese, Chinese. And that was really nice because it also had that cultural connection element where I felt like, wow, my Chinese is actually working towards me being able to communicate better with this person who I would otherwise not be able to speak to at all. And learning about her culture and the things that she's up to and the attitudes towards the world and her whole perspective was so cool and so interesting, and it made it feel so much more meaningful. Learning languages is all about communicating with people and connecting with them. Bringing it back to connection with people brings it full circle and makes it feel really real and really meaningful. If you enjoyed this video, I think you might like this video over here where I talk more about the strategies that we can put into place to self-study a language, such as Mandarin or any other language as well, is applicable to many different languages. Thank you so much for watching. As always, take care of yourself and I will see you in the next video. Bye!